Hey, good afternoon. Live here from Virginia Beach, and this podcast episode, I have on Alex Moore. Alex, just like many men that I've introduced onto this podcast, I met through the Uncivilized Nation, and I got to know pretty deeply through some phone calls and some workshops that he hosted. And what stuck out to me was our stories were so similar. Alex is a certified uncivilized men's coach and also a no more Mr. Nice Guy coach, which he'll go deeper into. And we had so many things in common. And as I bring you in, Alex, and I'll let you share, the thing that stood out to me the most was that your daughter was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And for those that know and have been following my podcast, my daughter back in 2021 was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And we were just talking about that being your pain point. Before we get into that, tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you like to do, etc.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, man, for having me. And we have shared the same name as well. That similarity. So it was funny because I always meet, like my whole life growing up, there's no other Alexes, and now I just meet Alexes all the time now. But yes, like you said, my name is Alex Moore. I'm originally from St. Louis, Missouri, just in Illinois across the river. But yeah, St. Louis, Missouri is my hometown. Born and raised there. Family's all still there, but left there in 2008 to play rugby over in the UK, London. And from there, met my wife, Paula, who is a Kiwi from New Zealand. And yeah, we got married in 2012, found out we were pregnant with twins in 2013. And then a few short months later, packed up everything and moved back to New Zealand, to where we are now. We're in the South Island of New Zealand near Queenstown, which is quite a picturesque tourist town here. But yeah, that's where we've been for like nine and a half years. I've been in New Zealand, yeah, going on 10 this year. So yeah, that's where we're based now. And yeah, that's just I guess what have I like to do? Let's see. So I've been quite keen basketball player for basically my whole life. My team here won the championship that of the league we played in 2 years ago now. So after that, I hung up my basketball shoes, retired, and picked up jujitsu under the recommendation of a few guys in the nation. Robert Wenderlich is probably number one, and then Traver, obviously, and a bunch of other guys do jujitsu and have loved that for the last year. And it's something I get to do with my son as well. So basketball is kind of me going off and practicing in games, whereas jujitsu, my son and I do it together. So he's 7 now; he just turned 7, and yeah, so we started jujitsu when he was 6, and when I was 41, yeah, so I turned 42 in like 3 or 4 weeks. So yeah, that's kind of my hobbies now. I also have a side hustle as a jeweler. That's how I initially met Traver. Was I made him a ring based on one of his quotes. Gold Pan Pete was that jewelry brand. And I've kind of shifted now into a food truck, American style smash burgers here in New Zealand called Buffalo's, which is going awesome. And I'm sure we'll talk about that later on. And yeah, just making a whole shift with my career, getting out of teaching for a little while and just seeing how that goes. But yeah, that's kind of my thing at the moment. Training, exercise, jujitsu, and yeah, just kind of building businesses. So
As
that's
I
kind of where I'm at the moment.
as I sit here and I listen to that, it's amazing on the similarities that we were talking about. You're a basketball player. I'm a basketball player. I mean, I can go down the list. BJJ. I started BJJ. Our kids. 2013, 2014, very similar in age. Everything that goes down the list. But what's the most inspiring to me that I want to transition point here is that even you're 41, about to be 42, even in all this, you've leaned into what else there is, right? Like you were living this life and you've transitioned, and where most men, and I'm speaking from me, there's fear that holds us back, right? That fear, we start to restrict, and we don't look, or we don't have curiosity into what else there is for us. And ultimately what it comes down to, and this podcast theme this year is turning our pain into our power. And I was telling you before we got on here that our journey as people, but more specifically as men, is sitting with our pain, understanding our pain, knowing our pain, and turning that into our power, our internal power, our heart power, our purpose in life. And you talked about the moment that your life changed was when your daughter was diagnosed with a brain tumor. Take me back there and let's start there.
Yeah. So like when you're saying that about fear of going deeper in things, and it's always been like I've never had a fear of escaping. I guess you could put it like I've always was taught by my mom and dad at a young age that I could, yeah, do anything and go anywhere. And like when my after high school, I went to school out in California just on my own, moved out there, moved over to the UK, pretty much on my own. And yeah, I was never afraid of those things. But yeah, it was really that fear of going deeper when, yeah, like I remember everything perfectly clear from 2017. It was literally, I think, 2 or 3 days after Mother's Day in 2017, which in New Zealand here is in beginning of May. I think it's the same as the US. I think it was the UK that was a bit different for Mother's Day. But anyway, yeah, my daughter having this like kind of weird limp for a few days, and we thought it looked like she like kind of had hyperextended her knee. And so we took her to the doctor, and the doctor told us that, oh, it just looks like it's probably just a viral infection. Kids can get that in their joints and causes issues. And then, didn't quit, when you feel something but it doesn't sit right, like you don't really trust that information, like that doctor's diagnosis. Normally I would have been like, okay, cool. He's a doctor. He knows what he's talking about. This time didn't sit the same. And I remember looking up online and seeing all these different things, which is the worst thing to do is look online for diagnoses for things. But a friend of my wife sent her friend a video of Grace walking. So Grace was my daughter, one of the twins that was the one who was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And the friend called back at like 3 a.m. saying like, you need to take her down to the hospital in Dunedin, which is like a 3-hour drive. So she needs to get an MRI, just get down there as soon as possible. And like this is 3 a.m. where my wife and I are both freaking out. She calls her dad comes over, picks them up, and they drive down. And I'm staying at home with Bo, my son, who was probably, was he 6 months old or a year and a yeah, no, a year and a half. He was a year and a half. And yeah, drove them down. And I'm here with the other two kids and just waiting all day. They go to school. I stay home that day because I'm obviously with the kids, and Bo, who's little, and just thinking about it all day. And then that night, I remember the kids go to bed, and my wife calls and says, and I'm in our bedroom. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed and she's like, Grace has a brain tumor. I remember just kind of leaving my body and just being like, what? Like, just total disbelief, and just being like, just screaming, no, not Gracie. And yeah. And so I can't remember really much of what the conversation was after that. I can't remember if she put me on the phone with the doctor. I think she did, but like I said, after that moment, it was kind of a bit of a blur. And so, yeah, got off the phone and just remember going and laying on the couch, knowing that I had to call my mom because it was about 10, 11 o'clock, which would have been in St. Louis, 6 a.m. or so, something like that. And I remember just waiting for that time to come around. So I knew she'd be awake, and I called, and, I remember talking to her and telling her, and basically her words were, I know we've not been very religious, but just pray, and yeah, got off the phone. I remember I went and slept in Grace's bed. But from that moment, like I just started just the mantra of thanking and praying to God that she was healed from that moment. You know what I mean? And yeah, so then that was kind of the initial days. A couple of days later, or the next morning, sorry, some friends drove me down to the hospital. I stayed there. We stayed there a night or two, and then we flew up to Auckland, which is like the main city in New Zealand. It's about a 3-hour flight. So we're at the bottom of the South Island. Auckland's at the top of the North Island for just geography purposes. And yeah, so got there. We went to the the hospital. She checked her in, and they were going to do a biopsy of it. And what we were told at the first hospital was it didn't look good at all. It was pretty much worst case scenarios and terrible spot. They couldn't operate on it, and we were preparing for the worst. So we get up to Auckland to the hospital, and we stay in the Ronald McDonald House there. And I remember thinking like, okay, maybe this will be good. We'll be able to meet other families who are in similar situations. And we did. We actually met some really great families, but still, yeah. So my daughter had the biopsy, and I remember too then like being there when she woke up, and the surgeon who's like the main brain surgeon in the hospital said, from what I can tell and what my experience, like it looks good. And I was like, what the hell does that mean? And he's like, yeah, it looks, what I could tell, nice and round. It didn't have much kind of going on with it. And what was causing her issues was it had a cyst on it. So there's a cyst as part of the tumor that was pressing on the nerves that affected her walking and her right side of the body. And so, he drained that. And then, we were in Ronald McDonald House for about a week or so then. And then they said, look, we'll call you in 2 weeks with the results. And so go back home. My mom had flown in from the States, was with us. And so we went back home, had a couple of weeks, and we were in a cafe, and the hospital called. And, my wife like basically had a panic attack right then and there. And basically they told us that we needed to fly up to the next local biggest hospital, which is like a 2-hour flight to Christchurch. And that's where like the children's cancer ward is, the local one for the South Island, the Chalk, they call it. And they have a meeting there. So we're just like, what the hell do we need to have a meeting for? They told us they're going to call us with the results. So they flew us up there the next day, and basically just for the meeting, and we're flying us home that night. So basically a 1-day trip to fly up, have this meeting. So we were just expecting the total worst. And being in this meeting, like my wife and I are sitting there, the head surgeon and the head oncologist from the child oncology department there was in a meeting. And I remember just them talking, just all this kind of this medical jargon, and just carrying on and without giving us any real information. And then he kind of talking about brain, there's brain tumors and they have different grades. And so there's grade 1, which is kind of a slow growing and benign. And there's grade 4, which is, the worst. And I'm imagining him saying like, and it's Grace is a 3. And that's what I'm picturing in my head as he's saying this. And then they're talking again. I'm just like, just get it out, And so he's saying, and with Grace's tumor, hers is a grade 1. And we're just like, oh, fuck, like total relief. And I remember just that, oh man, that moment was so exhilarating. So what she has, I forget that exactly. It's a juvenile polycystic astrocytoma, something like that. I can't remember exact wording of it. But it's near her brain stem, so they can't operate on it. But it is a benign tumor and very slow growing. So they said that she could have had it since birth and was growing, and that it was actually the cyst that alerted them that, those symptoms that gave us symptoms to tell us what was up with it. But yeah, as part of that and going on, like I had a few friends that I reached out to, and like what do you say to somebody in that situation? And I had a few friends that didn't even reply back. Our people in my life, people I thought were friends, that didn't reply back. And other friends were just like, oh, sorry, I'm sorry to hear that, which and I'm thinking like, man, don't you think he'd say a bit more? But in looking back now, I was like, I think myself, what could I have said? Like, what do you say in that situation? And then I had another friend who came and like met with us, and he was like, oh man, sorry I didn't get in touch sooner. I just didn't know what to say. And like that made all the difference, him coming and saying that, because, you had, like I said, I had people that I didn't hear back from, but I'm glad that he was able to come tell me like, man, I'm so sorry I didn't reach up sooner. I just didn't know what to say. He has a few kids as well. And, I know his kids are his world too, like most dads. And yeah, so it just meant a lot that he was able to come through with that. But still, I still kind of felt just totally alone, like I didn't want to talk to my family about it. I didn't want to talk to anybody about it. I just kept everything in. And just from, I guess, my views of what a dad or a man and a husband should be, is that I needed to just suck it up and be the one to, just be there for the family rather than been looking after myself. Um, and that was kind of the major turning point for me in my life, is going from just a kind of a go with the flow type of guy, pretty laid back. Like I remember, it's a funny story. I had to do community service when I was about 17. No, I'm sorry, about 19. We got caught with a bunch of beer in the car when I was going down to this lake. And so my community service, I went to YMCA to do some community like cleaning and stuff. And I remember one of the other custodians there was like, man, he's like, what drugs are you on? And I was like, I'm not on any drugs, man. Why? He goes, oh, you're so laid back, you're almost falling down. And that's how kind of I always kind of wore it as like a badge of honor, like just real cruisy, go with the flow, and yeah, let other people take the lead. And that's kind of what really, that moment, that whole situation with my daughter really kind of changed that, and realizing that I needed to step up a bit more as a husband, as a father, and as a man in general. And it's still a work in progress at the moment, as it always is, but I definitely think I've improved a ton on that in that sense. But and then also just being able to, talk to other men and confide in them. Like I've realized now that some of those wounds that I've had as a child, those masculine and feminine wounds, that not trusting men, and that goes back to the nice guy stuff, that men are the competition. So yeah, sharing this stuff with other men wouldn't make me a strong man in their eyes, type of mentality. That was kind of what my thoughts were. And it'd make me more weak just in general, why I need to be a strong man, not a weak guy, talking about his feelings and what's going on and things like that. So yeah, that's kind of a long story. But yeah, hope that answered that first question. All right.
Yeah, no, it's what came up right there at the end. There's like, this could go so many different ways. You mentioned about the masculine, the feminine wound, right? And the parent wound, and how that plays out, or how that can come out in our lives as we get older. But I want to go back to what you said about like your idea, man, like what you needed to be as a dad was you need to be the driving force. You needed to suck it up, like no emotion. You needed to be the mountain in the storm, but you didn't have a support system. From what I'm hearing, you didn't have a support system. So what were you doing for yourself?
Oh, I forgot to actually mention. So for a couple weeks, we were home. Then we had to fly up. So we flew up and got that news. We went back home. And then it was literally probably like a week later that the cyst had filled back up. And the preschool that the girls were at called us and said, look, Grace is not doing very well. And so we took her to the hospital, or to the doctor in town. And then they said, look, she needs to go back up to Christchurch, up to the hospital. And they didn't really give us, but apparently it was pretty bad. Like they didn't lead on. We didn't find it out till later. So they flew her up, helicoptered her up with my wife up to Christchurch. And then the other kids and I drove up the next day, and then we were there for 6 months. So we were away from home for 6 months. I took like leave from work, and we stayed in Ronald McDonald House. And so basically I was with the kids, just looking after the kids in this house. And there's all these other families there. My wife spent a lot of time in the hospital with Grace. And then we'd kind of switch out. And then eventually she was able to come stay at the house with us, the Ronald McDonald House with us. And we just have to go to the hospital, which is a 5-minute walk for her appointments, which are quite often. I was able to go to the gym there, which was quite a good stress reliever. My brother-in-law lives up in Christchurch, which was good. We saw them every now and then. I had a few friends in Christchurch that when we first moved to New Zealand, we lived there for about a year. And so I had some friends that I would able to go and do stuff with, biking, or go do CrossFit, or we did some boxing with another friend of mine. So a lot of fitness stuff when I'm saying this. And also, like I mentioned, I have a jewelry brand. And so I found like this Silversmiths Guild, which is kind of like an open workshop where you can go and like kind of work on using their equipment and stuff. So I went there and was able to have like a bit of an outlet. But as far as like sharing stuff, it was all just kind of kept in. I remember, excuse me, my brother-in-law brought me to a men's group for his church. And I remember just sitting there in a circle and just thinking like, just my hands on my head, just like, what am I doing here? Like this is I don't want to share anything. These guys are weirdos and stuff. And yeah, so I just thought it was super, super strange to be able to for guys to sit around and just and talk like this, and it was just a typical men's circle, just sharing what was going on in their life and stuff. And I remember too thinking like, yeah, these guys are talking about things that I don't give a shit about. You know what I mean? Like this is going on for me. Yeah, try going through that. I remember kind of thinking that like just being like, yeah, your problems are nothing compared to what I'm going through, and how can you relate? That was kind of my mentality with it. And yeah, left there and was like, I'm never doing anything like that again. That was so uncomfortable. And yeah, so that was kind of the gist. After 6 months, we came back home, and then it was really maybe a couple months after that. So there's more. It's like got back home about November, and I think it was maybe February or so. My father-in-law and I went to this dad's camp, they called it. So one of the organizations that really helped us through our journey is called the Child Cancer Foundation here in New Zealand, a great charity. Um, and they put on these camps for dads and moms, as a bit of an outlet. So they did a retreat for moms one weekend, retreat for dads another weekend, and they fly you up to the spot like in the mountain, kind of right on the river, or on the ocean outside of Christchurch, where we kind of were based. Like I said, we were back home, flew up there, and it was basically 3 days of kind of workshops, different activities, hanging out with other men who've gone through the same things. And the thing that really kind of shook me was, we were lucky because during this time we were back home. The MRI results that we'd got since then showed that the tumor was shrinking, that the treatment was working. But we were at this camp where dads that had lost their kids, quite a few had lost their kids. Some were right in the middle of really bad chemos and surgeries and terrible stuff. And we were kind of on the other end and on the out the door for the most part. And there's a few other dads like that. But then looking at seeing the strength of these dads that had lost their kids, was really inspiring. And then from there, they had a lot of the circles there. And I think just hearing other guys who were going through the same thing or gone through worse things. And then I couldn't say to myself, oh, what do you guys know about this stuff? You know what I mean? Like these guys have been through hell and back and have lived through it and are there sharing and helping others who are going through it, when they've had the worst possible outcome from their journey with their child. And yeah, and then seeing too, like being there with my father-in-law and us being in the circle and him like totally breaking down and crying, just basically thinking the same thing, that like he thought that Grace was going to die, and just to for him to see him share quite openly like that really was a huge motivator for me. So from then, yeah, then I kind of had a whole change of mindset about, what it was to be able to share and be a man. And you don't have to just keep everything all locked up inside. You're able to share and yeah, so that was huge for me. And then yeah, things kind of gradually got back to semi-normal. We just have to travel down to the hospital, which the first hospital we went to for the chemo, like once a month. And then after a year of doing that, then that was done. And now she just has 6 months MRIs, and everyone since then has been great. And I think now we've just had the last one when was the last one? December, I guess. Yeah, everything was fine with that. And I'm hoping then it will go to either yearly or be totally done with them, because nothing has ever changed in 7 months. And I remember we had an after treatment meeting with the oncologist, who I became actually quite friends with, one of the oncologists there, but we had a meeting with him. And I said, look, does this kind of thing go back? And he's like, look, I can't say that it ever won't, but he's like, I've never seen this type of tumor kind of start growing again after it's kind of died. And as she gets older, because it's like a juvenile based tumor, as she gets older, she obviously gets bigger, so the tumors stay the same size, which is good. It's still got a bit of room for growth because she's growing. And also they just kind of seem to go dormant once they kind of die out like that. So knock on wood, that's what's going to happen. And she'll be I think she has a shunt that drains the cyst constantly if it needs to. And I think the only side effect is that she won't ever be able to go scuba diving because she has this cyst, but everything else, she's pretty much back to normal, healthy. They just started school. She's year 5, which is the 4th grade in the US. And yeah, doing great. And yeah, you wouldn't really know anything ever happened. And we kind of try to put that out of our mind now. But yeah, it never really is. But you try to just move on and close that chapter and open up the next one, which is kind of what we've done.
Yeah, I when you had said you put it out of your mind, what came to mind was a an Instagram reel that I saw with Gabor Mate. I think that's what you say, how you pronounce his name,
Yeah.
and he talks.
Yeah.
He was talking about mental illness, but the message was that we all have a choice, right? We all have a choice that we can allow our the things that we are experiencing in life, our experiences, to either hold us back or use them to propel us in the right direction, to propel us to our highest self, or whatever the case may be. And that's the message that I've taken with regards to my daughter is, like, the tumor's healed, you're doing well, like it's gone. That's the message I sent to my kids, and so that's admirable when I hear you say that, and I'm so glad that things are going well for your daughter and for your family. What came to me as you were talking, and it ties back to something you said earlier about your masculine feminine wound, is that being exposed in that 6-month period at Ronald McDonald House, and being able to be in some men's group and men's community, or seeing that vulnerability side, would you say that part of your masculine wound, or your father wound, or parent wound, whatever you want to name it, there was some healing that occurred there?
Yeah, I haven't really thought about more of those masculine feminine wounds going with that kind of part of me, but yeah, I definitely think there has been some things definitely that have healed. For example, like being able to trust men more. That's one of them. Like I said, being less passive, being more of a leader. There's some other rooms, like I said, I've had to work on since then, more with my relationship with my wife. Like we were there to support each other, but it still was kind of, man, the situation we were in. Yeah, we were living in like basically like a 2-bedroom little hotel room for 6 months, so very close quarters, not much time really on our own to do things. So yeah, so definitely the relationship, I think we were there for each other, but yeah, I think it wasn't like the greatest, I guess, because we were there more for our daughter rather than for ourselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then that's kind of where I got into the Knowing Mr. Nice Guy journey after that, because I was looking on, I forget actually how I found the book, but downloaded it and listened to it on Audible's audio version, and remember thinking like, oh my God, like this book is written about me, and then I told my wife about it. We were actually going on a date, and the place was about 45 minutes away, and we listened to it, and she was like, it's thought the exact same thing. A few little things, like a lot of like one trait of some nice guys, one of them can be dishonesty, and like and she agreed. I don't really feel like I'm dishonest. And yeah, same with she felt the same, but everything else was pretty much spot on. Yeah, not a lot of sexual shame. I don't think I have a lot of sexual shame, but yeah, pretty much everything else, as far as like being a people pleaser and having covert contracts and
Keep going, because this is a good transition. So for those that don't know, like,
yeah.
what is a nice guy? Like, this is your bread and butter. Let's get into it.
Yeah, so
Grace, real quick, sorry for the transition piece, but Grace, you mentioned that this was really what made you realize that you were too laid back, and now you wanted to be assertive, you wanted to be present, you want to be grounded, you wanted to lead like you knew you could. And so Mr. Nice Guy, no more Mr. Nice Guy, was that.
yeah, so basically, yeah, being passive, being laid back, having covert contracts, um, validation, trying to find validation in things, a lot of things like, yeah, sex and stuff like that. Um, People pleasing, not having boundaries, just being no real ambitions, procrastinating, not following through with things you say you're going to do. So a lot of those are all traits of the nice guy syndrome, they call it.
Where did this going back to your story real quick, like where did this nice
Mm.
guy syndrome, like where did it show up in your life? As this has been
Yeah.
propels you forward, like obviously that, there was something there that you said that like, hey, this was me. Where did that show up in your life?
Yeah, I think probably the main thing was uh, people pleasing, not having boundaries. And I remember one time with my wife, like we were talking, actually, I think it was the same date, and we were talking about boundaries. And she's like, I need boundaries. Like she actually came out and said it. And I remember thinking, like, I don't even know what boundaries are. And I remember having to go to Google and look up what are boundaries in a relationship type thing. And yeah, so that was the main thing. Yeah, just people pleasing and avoiding conflict. Yeah, just trying to do anything that you know avoided conflict with people or and my wife, and being a doormat. Let people walk all over me, and just and various things. But yeah, procrastination and doing stuff that I said I wanted to do or never followed through with, or saying stuff I was going to do, which actually kind of leads into the food truck later on, and basically, yeah, sticking to my word and doing it. But yeah, like I said, some nice guys have a lot of sexual shame and are dishonest. Lots of times where to be a nice guy, you don't have to have every single thing, but yeah, a lot of the things like I talked about were the typical nice guy stuff.
Yeah. Would you say, and I'm asking for clarification purposes, would you say, like, when you say dishonesty, with regards to dishonest about what their true needs and desires are, or just like dishonest in general? Um,
Dishonest in general, like it could be like like if what's some examples, like, oh, like if your wife asks you if you like the dress she's wearing, and you hate it, but you say, oh yeah, yeah, it's great. It's like little things, or even like white lies, like little white lies. I can't think of any off the top of my head of what could be, but just things that don't even really matter, but you're not being truthful about it. And yeah, so there's lots of nice guys that have that kind of trait of, yeah, or just like over exaggerating and making stuff up, about a situation, at work or something like that. Yeah, just to really kind of get some type of validation.
yeah.
um yeah.
As you, so you, as your exposure to Ronald McDonald's house, and you started to see men's group, and then you found No More Mr. Nice Guy. Uh, Talk to me about the months leading after that exposure, and then finding No More Mr. Nice Guy. Like, what resources, what started to change in your life? What were things that you started to excel or to do that you weren't doing before your daughter's diagnosis?
mm. um Ooh. One was, I think, after we got back home, I kind of, like I said, I was having time to be able to work out quite a bit. I did a lot of CrossFit before the diagnosis, and after coming back, I just let that fall off my radar, and just kind of let myself go, and wasn't caring for myself, and was just being like a slob, really. Just staying up too late watching TV, and just sitting at home not doing much. And like I've kind of, since my 20s, I've kind of dwindled down from drinking, so I wouldn't sit at home and like drink or anything. But yeah, I guess it was probably like, yeah, 2018, for a couple of years, was just kind of going with the flow. But um yeah, once I started kind of diving into Mr. Nice Guy, I think actually I probably kept things pretty similar. Like I knew of it, I was starting to become aware of it, but I hadn't really made a lot of changes. I didn't really do the activities that's recommended to go through the healing from being a nice guy, or the recovery. And this probably was, through lockdown here, like like most places with COVID and lockdowns and things, home with the family. Like that was quite a good time for our family. We were lucky because I was a teacher, so I was getting paid still. I know, like it's hard to say that because a lot of people lost their jobs and things, but we were in our situation, we were quite lucky. It was warm outside, so we could spend a lot of time outside as a family, and yeah, just doing things. And I spent a lot of time on just learning and kind of improving myself, and online, doing online learning. Like I learned how to do kind of 3D CAD design for like my jewelry and things. So just trying to better myself in that way. But like I mentioned, like no huge changes. And it was really probably I think it was 2021, early 2021, when I discovered then Man Uncivilized. So Traver's book. I saw it on Instagram. Someone else had posted about it. And yeah, started following Traver, and then saw his book, and then yeah, listened to his book, and then kind of like No Mr. Nice Guy, Man Uncivilized really kind of resonated with me and kind of kicked me into gear. So one of the, I started I got a hold of Traver and made a ring for him, and yeah, sent it to him. And then he's telling me about the nation, and yeah, ended up joining the nation. And that was probably a huge, yeah, booster to kind of where I am today, was joining the nation and not being that lone wolf. Like I didn't have many friends here, maybe just like a couple guys from like basketball, or one friend, good friend from basketball, and another friend just from doing jewelry. He's like a Canadian guy that's the local jeweler in town. So yeah, became good friends with him. But yeah, as far as like a tribe of men, like the nation that's what that kind of brought me. And yeah, since then has been huge in my growth. So I think, like I said, joined the nation early 2021. And then my wife and I actually saw this. So that those indigenous people in New Zealand are the Maoris. And so I saw this Maori healer who's an empathetic healer. And basically, he could feel stuff in his body, your pains and your aches, and can kind of um, diagnose them and relate them back to traumas and kind of more emotional stuff. And so seeing him, like, I was a bit weary. Like my wife went and saw him first. When she came back, she's like, "You have to go see this guy. He's amazing. Like he was able to tell me all this stuff about you that was totally true." Basically saying all like the nice guy stuff to my wife without even meeting me. And so I went and saw him, and yeah, a lot of the stuff was right-sided pain. Like which is pain, like from the masculine side.
Yeah.
And I was also having some like forearm pain, like kind of more like a in the joint of my elbow there, from like, imagine like, that muscle, if you're doing pull-ups, that kind of muscle there in your forearm that gets worked. So it was like super sore for months. And he related that to a block in like creativity and like wanting to do more, and like basically, yeah, I was kind of just stuck in my ways and needed to get more of an outlet and more of a different kind of, yeah, career type of thing. And so he told me, he's like, you're being a teacher is you're kind of subconscious telling you that you need to be a father figure in these kids' lives, whether they need it or not. He's like, I don't see that being your true calling. And he's like, I don't think you have a passion for it. And I actually like I did, but I'd kind of long been becoming burnt out on it over the years. And he's like, I see your calling is working with like kind of young men and men as like a mentor or a coach, and in that sense. So that was quite eye-opening for me. And he actually, yeah, said some other things too that was quite mind-blowing. So over the last few years, I've been having like issues with my ear, vertigo and like tinnitus and ringing and in my left ear. And he goes, and without saying anything about it, he goes, "Have you been having trouble with your left ear?" So I was like, "Oh, that's weird. How did you know that?" "Yes, I have." And he goes, I can sense you're a grandmother who's passed, who's passed away. That is, I can sense her basically being in your ear, well, literally, I guess, telling me that it's really important to support my wife and what she's doing. And what my wife was actually doing was starting a coaching practice herself for women. And he was able to describe my grandma, and he's like, she's very very strong-willed, kind of almost emasculating type of woman, and which is 100% true. And she's like not a man hater, but like very like very, puts men down and stuff, and not your typical kind of real sweet grandma. And which was totally true about my grandma. And yeah, that kind of blew me away with that. So fast forward a few months, then Traver and Dave from Uncivilized Nation announced that they're having a coaching and leadership, coaching certification and leadership course. And from then I knew that, yep, this has all happened for a reason and I needed to take it. So I did. And then, yeah, started my coaching kind of business, Forged by Fire Coaching, not long after that. And then that next kind of January, which was last January now, January 2022, finished my No More Mr. Nice Guy coaching certification with Dr. Glover, who's the author of No More Mr. Nice Guy. So I've, learned directly under him and have been working with him on different projects. We actually have a big project that I'm working with him and like 5 other coaches on, that's coming out this year, which is going to be huge and really excited for. But yeah, I've been helping him kind of co-coach and in some of his groups that he has. And yeah, it's just been great. And along with my own kind of private coaching and group coaching. So yeah, working with men in that sense, and basically like wanting to be a support unit or support person and a coach for men that have gone through similar things or struggling, or just haven't had someone have their back, and just wishing that I want to be someone that I wish that I had when I was kind of going through my struggles, and even when I was younger too, kind of when I was kind of a bit misguided and not doing shit properly, and just like I said, being that laid back guy and just going with the flow rather than stepping into my masculinity and taking charge of my life.
How is the men's group or men's work in general? You found Traver and Man Uncivilized in early 2021. How has that up leveled you, surrounding yourself with men?
I think just not relying on my wife to fill all my buckets. I'm able to, if I have a problem, I'm able to call up a bunch of guys and talk to them, and they're able to give me advice and help me out. And so I'm not having to go to my wife about every little thing, which can be overwhelming to her, and, one of the things we learned from Dr. Glover was he does these things called cooperative reciprocal relationships, which is basically like a relationship where you're both getting something, whether it's money, could be money like a coach and a client. That's you're getting, one person's getting coaching, other person's getting paid for it. It could be a business. It could be, like if I have a need to get my teeth fixed, or if I go to cleaned or something, then that relationship with that dental hygienist or the dentist, I'm paying them and they're doing that service to me. So they're filling all the different buckets, and not relying on just one person, which previously was my wife, to fill those buckets, and it doesn't have to be a person. Like the gym can be that relationship. Like you're paying to go to the gym, but you're getting fitness and exercise and that, stress relief and those endorphins, all the things that working out does, you're getting that in return. So yeah, just taking that load, like I think that load off, that emotional load off my wife, and yeah, not coming to her with every little thing. But also, yeah, just being able to share stuff that I wouldn't share with my wife, and instead of keeping them all in, or, and yeah, just venting and yeah, talking to the guys and talking about men's stuff, I guess.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, because I remember when I started this, I didn't feel like I had anyone. You mentioned being alone. And when I started to surround myself with men that were doing the work, that were in these circles, that were venting, that I realized that my relationship specifically with my wife changed, because so oftentimes subconsciously as men, we look to our spouses, our significant others, our partners, whatever you want to call them. We look at them as like, hey, I need you to fill all my needs. And that's draining,
Mm.
right? That
Yeah.
kills the polarity. It can drain the relationship. And so what you said about having other people to fit your needs, to fill your needs, and the power of men's work and men that are able to hold that space transitions me to, you saw this Maori is how you would say it.
If you, it's spelled Maori. I actually always get the pronunciation messed up. Like most people say Maori, because that's how it looks, but it's actually like, it's got like a rolling R. It's like a Maori. Like I even
So
like it makes
I
sense.
can't
So
roll my
Maori's fine.
R's.
Maori's fine.
If my wife
Yeah, yeah.
listens to this podcast, she'll laugh. I can't roll my R's, so I'm not going to try. But seeing this healer, uh, and talking about that, you had this blockage around creativity. You started to be in this men's group. This last couple of years have been pretty big for you, from seeing you on social media with buffaloes, and obviously, like, I know that you were doing Gold Pan Pete, but like working through jewelry and opening the restaurant and doing all these other things. Talk to me about that, because most men, when you're stuck in a path, or when you're driving to someone else's dream, and then you sit with yourself and you realize, hey, I'm burning out, this is not my dream. There's the fear of not being enough. There's the fear of not being able to provide, fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of, all this fear comes up, and they don't take the step. You just leaned face first and started stepping.
Yeah. So just a bit about the cooking and stuff. Like I've always, when we've had barbecues in here, I'd always love to make like foods from the states that I love and miss, and kind of replicate them. And I did a bit of cooking during lockdown and stuff too, so I learned a bit more. But yeah, we'd always have, when we'd have people over at barbecue, and I'd make burgers and deep fried Oreos and different things that you get in the States. And people, our friends were like, oh, you need to open up a cafe or a restaurant or a food truck type of thing. And I'd always kind of been like, yeah, that'd be awesome. And it would always look online and see ones for sale, and just being like, oh yeah, that'd be so cool, and never do anything more. And it was actually a friend of mine from basketball, my good friend, messaged me a Facebook link, and it was a local food truck that was for sale, and it was literally like in town. And I messaged the guy and I said, oh, look, how much is it? Just checking it out. And he told me, and I was like, oh wow, that's a lot cheaper than I thought. It's basically half of what I thought of what the other kind of going ones would be around. So it's quite cheap. And so I talked to my wife, and she was like, just do it. She's like, you've been talking about it for ages. What's the worst thing that could happen if we just did it? And I said, well, when you think about it that way, if it doesn't work out, we probably sell it for double what we paid for it. And she's like, all right, well, do it then. And so, yeah, messaged the guy and was like, yeah, I'll take it. And so, yeah, well, I went around and looked at it and stuff, but yeah, messaged him and said, yeah, I'll take it. And yeah, it was really that thing of just basically having that intention and thinking, what's to lose? Think about the worst case scenario. Okay, it doesn't work out. I can't do it. Am I going to die? No. Is it going to bankrupt me? No. Is it, can I sell it for, even if not double what I pay for it, can I get my money back? Yeah, absolutely. What's the harm in trying? And so he said, yeah, fuck it. And yeah, bought it. And basically it's been a huge hit. And basically it was just going to start off as a side hustle. And it quickly fit a gap in the market that we didn't know the town was looking for, and that's kind of a high quality food, easy to get a takeaway, but at a decent price still. And so, yeah, people love the food. We got some really loyal supporters in the last year. So in 2022, my year was the year of commitment. And that was basically committing to doing the things that I say I was going to do. So it started with the food truck. And yeah, basically everything along with that was basically based on that year. So I said I was going to stop drinking for the year, and I did. Yes, I went for the year and still going. So I probably won't go back. So yeah, stuck to that commitment. Done 75 hard, did 75 hard phase 1, just did phase 2 in January and have just started phase 3 a couple days ago. So yeah, the commitment to do 75 hard, the commitment to stick to a workout plan and kind of taking care of myself better with all those kind of foundations of sleep and working out, eating right, movement. Yeah, committing to all that stuff. And then kind of halfway through the year, I was like, look, wonder what would happen if I took this thing full time. Like I said, I was becoming burnt out at teaching. And probably this must have been September, October last year, I talked to my boss, the principal at my school, and I said, look, this is what I want to do. I want to take a year's refresher leave, they call it here. And he was totally supportive, said, hey, if you don't do it now, you don't want to have those regrets down the line of what could have been. And so it's been super supportive. So into the school year here in New Zealand goes from like February or end of January till December. So the school year finished in December. We just had summer vacation and Christmas break and all that stuff. And the kids went back yesterday, and today's their second day back to school, and I'm not teaching, and it feels great. And just feels like it's meant to be. Like I'm not worried about anything because I know over the last year I built up that reputation and that business to where it's overtook my teaching job. It overtook the income my teaching job provides, and then able to focus more on taking in more coaching clients and running more groups and things, which will be starting up soon. A few groups that we got that have going. But yeah, just following that commitment. And so this year was the year of freedom. So of working towards financial freedom, the freedom of, not having a boss, or not say a boss, because not having a job where I was the employee, let's say that, because I did have a boss, but a principal is a bit different than a boss, like at a commercial business, but and all the same. Yeah. Freedom. Continuing the freedom from alcohol. And we're going to a meeting after this call actually with a home builder. So we're going to be building a new house this year. Like the place we live now is awesome. We lived here for 9 years, just about 8.5, 9 years. It's my in-laws kind of property. It's a cherry orchard. And so, they end up selling the orchard and the house. And actually the section that we're buying is just really right next door. It's on pretty much, they split the land off a couple acres, a few, like 10 years ago. And so, we're going to build on that. So it'll be, freedom of rent, so to say, but, have our own kind of space, 2 acres with a little house on and stuff. And just keep growing the business, and both businesses, my wife's business, her coaching business. So that's the goal of freedom of kind of strings that tie us to things, and just kind of living our own kind of lives.
Yeah, knowing you personally, like I celebrate that, everything that you just said, man. It brings immense joy listening to that. Leaning into your creativity, going back to this creativity piece, right? Because men, we're so stuck with structure. We're the driving force. Things have to be a certain way. We don't like to go with the flow. Leaning into your creativity and allowing just to whatever flows. What changed for you as a man? What started coming up? And it could be a feelings, it could be financial abundance, or whatever it is. Like what started changing for you?
Like at the moment, you mean? Like I guess I've always had like that fear of probably not a fear with money, but a deep down kind of thing with money. Like growing up, I remember money was not totally abundant. Like we were always provided for. Like my dad worked super hard. Like he worked all the time. And that's where I think some of my Norm Mr. Nice Guy stuff comes from, is that my dad worked, when we were home. And so I didn't have a lot of time to spend with him. Whereas if he was home at nights, with us, and like he was away a lot of the weekends, but always provided for us plenty. Like we had a lake house down in Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri, and boats and jet skis and stuff. So we were definitely, I'd say, probably middle to higher class, but then not a lot of, I guess, when you're a kid, you don't really see those kind of things. You don't really, I guess you just want more than you have, I guess. Obviously there's people that had a lot less, but I guess always just never really knowing what to do with money. And so now I've learned to, learned about investing and learned about like building a business and how it works in Texas and all that stuff. So it's just like getting rid of those fears. And I learned that too, kind of in a very small side hustle business with my jewelry business, which was a creative thing. And that actually came up like just out of interest when I was getting married. The jeweler that was making my rings, I was talking to him about making it, and he taught, taught courses. And so I ended up taking a course from him for about a year on jewelry making, just a private lessons at his studio, and just loved it. And I found out later that my grandma's grandfather, so I guess my great grandfather, somewhere along that, a few greats in the grandfather list, when they were from Germany, came to the St. Louis area and were jewelers, something I didn't know until I started being jewelers. And my grandma actually still has some of the jewelry that they made. And I was able to find some online, some eyeglasses and like a pocket watch they had made. I actually got them on my screen now at the moment, just a picture of the screenshot of them. But yeah, stuff like, I guess that creative sense kind of runs in your genes almost. But yeah, it's just that outlet, I think, of, and that feminine side. Like growing up and being more the nice guy and really emotional as a kid, and sensitive, a sensitive kid. I wouldn't say emotional, but yeah, a sensitive kid. And kind of being more in my feminine, I guess, growing up, but then shifting that, I guess, to almost probably hyper masculine once like the stuff with Grace came up, and being that kind of the tough guy. I had to be a tough guy type of person and be strong all the time. And I think that jewelry and that creativity kind of balances out a bit. We all have masculine and feminine energies that it's best when they're balanced. You don't want to have too much masculine or too much feminine. And so, yeah, the creativity. So I've kind of taken a break from jewelry, but I've had that feeling. I get like a feeling where it's like, I need to make something. I need to like do something creative or something like that. And I actually, like, when I saw the guy, the healer, he recommended like guitar or something like that, or musical type of creativity. So I'll grab it real quick. I'll show you what I got. Just right here. I don't know if this is on video or not. If you're gonna do it like a video.
Yeah, I'm gonna
thing,
do video as well. So.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So I'll describe it as well because I know it's audio. You'll probably appreciate this too.
Is that a ukulele?
Ukulele.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
Elvis Presley ukulele. So those watching it just got a big blue star on it. It says Elvis, and it's got Elvis in like the 50s. I don't know what's his dance called. Do you know? You're from Tennessee, aren't you?
I am from Tennessee, and I was about to say, from someone that's from Tennessee, I can't remember the dance off the top of my head.
The Elvis dance where he's on his toes, like jiggling his hips, whatever it is. So for you guys listening, that's what the ukulele is. I won't play you a song, a few tunes, but yeah. So yeah, I actually haven't busted out for a while, so I'm having that itch, that internal itch to start playing it again and learning some new songs and things. But yeah, balancing out those energies and that polarity, in yourself. And I'm actually doing there's a guru, masculine feminine energy guru, Jake Woodard.
I know who he is.
I'm doing a course with him right now on like kind of the masculine feminine polarities. But yeah, it's good stuff. It's quite interesting. I'm interested a lot in it.
Yeah, I'm glad you hit that point, because that's exactly where I was hoping you would take it. Because I think as men, we get so stuck in our ways that we sometimes don't have the curiosity into what there could be if we just let things flow. And I've seen it, I've experienced it firsthand. I've also seen it with the men that are around me, that I've surrounded, my content intake, the people I talk to, and how much more of an integrated man, you become, because you get to experience not just the masculine side, but also the feminine side. And that makes you a whole different being. And so it leads me to my last question I say my last question, but if people want to work with you, if people, this resonated for people, I'm going to actually edit this out, because I don't want to end with this question. So I'm going to edit this piece out. I'm going to go back to one question.
Sure.
I've never done that before in a podcast, so I'm definitely gonna have to edit it out now. Um, this last year, I've leaned hard into spirituality, and when I mean spirituality, I don't mean religion. I mean spirituality and understanding chakras and understanding energies and masculine, feminine, it all. And one question that my wife had uh, she had posed to me, because I often in podcasts with, if you could go back to that moment in time, what advice would you give yourself? And I started to realize for myself is like, would I really even listen to that advice? And my new question that you're the first person I'm going to ask is, being souls in a human experience, what would you leave behind for your future self?
Mm. What would I leave behind for my future self? Like something physical or just any type of?
Anything that comes to mind. Like one where I'm going, well, I can give you what I'm working on. I'm writing a book, and it's really a book about just things that I've learned in this journey of men's work and identifying, discovering myself. And I'm leaving that behind in 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 hopes and effort to, when I find that in my next lifetime, that I can practice it a lot sooner.
Mm.
And it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be physical, but just it could be knowledge, it could be wisdom, whatever the case may be. Us as people, one of the many people out there, and I can say myself, is I want to leave a lasting legacy. Like, I want to leave an impact so big that it changes the world for generations to come. And so that's where I think I'm going with that question.
Mm. Yeah. Um, I would leave just a few truths, I guess. One would be to try as much things out as you can. Just test the waters with so much stuff. Don't be afraid to do new things. Don't be afraid to go places. Don't be afraid to start businesses. Don't be afraid to, yeah, just give things a go, because like we talked like before we start recording, like you'll fail and you'll learn from those failures. And those will be the greatest things. Like stick and do the hard things because they're worth it in the end. Um, Live with integrity and yeah, just enjoy every moment. Because as a dad now, and like I said, this kid's starting up school, and you realize like, man, they're just getting older and older, and you've missed those times when they were, you know, tiny. And so just enjoy every moment, even when they're sometimes hard moments. Um, Especially like our story with Grace, like that was a hard time, but yeah, we learned so much about ourselves and realized we learned how much strength we actually had um, going through that. So yeah, that would be my kind of thing I leave back for the future generations, because I don't want them living the same life that I've led. I want them to live forge their own path, and but if they follow those, they'll, you know, don't give up, keep going, and just like the things I said, things will work out great in the end.
I appreciate that. I'm going to give you about a minute or two to just riff on anything you want to riff on. Uh, and then at the end, just tell people how they can work with you. If your message, your story, it resonates, how they can get in touch.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess talking back, you were saying something that kind of rung a bell with me, and I kind of lost it in train of thought at the moment now. Um, Maybe it'll come back to me in a second, but yeah. So just oh, you probably edit this bit out too. My pausing. Oh, sorry, I lost it. I won't talk about that unless it comes back.
The good thing
Yeah,
is I can
no.
edit it out.
Yeah. Oh shit. Yeah, I was gonna say something too. Oh well. Anyway. Yeah. So work with me. My Instagram is a great way. That's probably the social media I'm most active on. Is Forged by Fire Coaching. That's FORGED dot fire dot coaching. And my website, this is www.forgebyfirecoach.com. Those are the best ways to get a hold of me. Yeah, like I said, Instagram is the biggest, or the most popular social media for me that I use. That's about it, really. But yeah,
You
pretty easy to get a hold of through there.
you mentioned about a few programs that you're going to be kicking out this year, and I
Mm,
always am a big believer of supporting, men, and I don't want to use the term businesses because I know you as a man, right? And I know
mm,
the quality of a man you are, and so supporting men that are doing this work, that are really trying to better uh, men out there and make a living from it. What programs do you have to offer, and just and how people can work with you besides reaching out through your
mm.
social media?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, we've got some men's group coaching coming up. Me and another coach, me and another Mr. Nomer, Mr. Nice Guy coach. We've done it in the past with groups of guys. So it's basically our own little kind of cohort of a men's group. Online, we do it. And we go through all sorts of kind of topics like finding your values, and that's what it was I was going to talk about. Anyway, I'll go back to that now. Yeah, so basically finding your values and how to lead, and talking about the polarity and sexual polarity and finding it with your wife with those masculine and feminine energies. Yeah, that's kind of the gist of the men's group coaching. So, and then it's open to other topics. If some of the guys in it are going through some things, we discuss it and go over it like that. The big one that I'm launching with Dr. Glover is kind of a men's community for No Mr. Nice Guy stuff, and a lot of coaching that he does kind of is based on the No Mr. Nice Guy symptoms and breaking through those and busting out and recovering from those symptoms and becoming a recovering nice guy. But courses and coaching on procrastination and getting what you want in life, and being stuck in a stuck in a job that you hate, and just being passive and setting boundaries, and all these things we can go into. As far as that, we're going to be launching programs for those. So any issues really that guys have in that Mr. Nice Guy sense, like there will be coaches and solutions for those issues, and more. So yeah, coming soon with that. But happy to, if anybody's keen or interested, then to get in touch, and they can go on like kind of a waiting list, email list, for more information.
Perfect.
The course I'm getting ready to start with him coaching in February. So that one's sold out now. But that is on positive emotional tension, which is very much like the polarity, masculine and feminine energies, and the polarity. And so that one's actually going to start soon. But the other program like that we're launching in the future, like probably more towards April, May, June, that one will include that as well. So yeah, lots of stuff for guys that need the help and are interested in nice guy stuff or associate with being a nice guy. Yeah, lots of stuff coming soon. But what I was going to say before is that you talked about like kind of learning, and that's actually one of my kind of core values, is a love of learning, like one of my virtues, the love of learning. And it's totally true. Like I'm just constantly in the search of knowledge. If something interests me, then I'm keen to find out how to do something or how to work something. And just I like to do a lot of different courses and learning, and just constantly up leveling myself, hence the course I'm doing at the moment with Jake Woodard, kind of really diving deep in those masculine and feminine energies. There's so much more included in it, like you said, like the chakras and all that spirituality and stuff. And I'm actually finishing another coaching certification, through a guy called Brian Johnson. Have you heard of him? And his program is heroic
I have heard
program.
of him. I have heard of him. Yeah.
Optimize heroic. So I've been, another uncivilized coach, Ryan Conklin, and I have been doing it for the last year. But we're finishing it up. Yeah, very soon. And a really like kind of thing that came up just recently in one of the lessons was, and a lot of his is like philosophical and spirituality and that sort of thing, like you're talking about. And one thing that came up was in this one of the textbooks that he kind of goes over was, if you can only say one prayer, for from now on, or for if you only say one prayer, have it be like a prayer of gratitude. And that really brought me back to, like I said, the mantra that I used with my daughter, that was that, thank you, God, for healing my grace, and like that really hit home. And I just listened to it yesterday. So yeah, and saying that too, yeah, just really brought back that gratitude. And yeah, gratitude for the situation and the journey I've been on, gratitude in meeting you and the rest of the guys in the nation, and gratitude for being on this podcast, being able to share my story. And yeah, you never know what ways that ripple will take it. If someone listens to this podcast, then boom, what will go from there. So hopefully it resonates with somebody, and then they're able to do great things with some information they've heard from this podcast. So yeah, that's why. Yeah, thank you, man, for having me. I'm really appreciative of it and grateful we could finally do it. And like I said, It's been this year now. The kids are back to school, summer break's over, and I'm not back teaching. It's like, yeah, it's opened my calendar. So I'm glad we're able to jump right on it straight away.
Absolutely. I appreciate everything, man. I appreciate your vulnerability and your curiosity to learning. And if there's one thing that I can push to men that's listening to this podcast, is being curious in your expansion, right? And that having pain, right? Painful moments in our life, it's okay. Like normalizing that painful moment and sitting with it and having the curiosity to lead into the expansion that comes with it. And that's the message that I get from you and from your story, is that you haven't allowed anything that's come up in your life limit you to expand and to be curious and being the best version of yourself. And so I just appreciate that. And then I'm also going to end here and say that I'm speaking into the universe that I will get some form of jewelry from you in 2023, 24, whatever, because I love your jewelry. Every time I see Bob, and this is a shout out to Bob, I'm jealous because I love his necklace. So Alex, thank you.
So the jewelry, I haven't even mentioned that the jewelry is Gold Pan Pete. So on Instagram at Gold Pan Pete. And now that I have a bit more free time too, I hope to jump back into that, that creative form and start creating again. And yeah, at Gold Pan Pete and at Forged by Fire Coaching, with dots between the forged and the fire and the coaching.
Hell yeah. Appreciate you, brother. Talk to you soon. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex.